Buen dia. Welcome back to Single Black Man from Des Moines. My name is Al Simon Jr. A little about me. I was a dog handler in the service. I worked in retail, healthcare, and libraries. I've taught Hapkido for over 20 years. I am currently single and retired from marriage. Now I'm a fledgling writer. From time to time, I'll read some of my pieces, both fiction and nonfiction. Time permitting, I'll tell a joke that I've heard from the past. I like to keep these no more than 15 to 20 minutes. Excuse me. I'll post stuff every week, so please like, share, and subscribe, especially on YouTube. If you'd like to purchase my works, I have some things over at Smashwords, or email me at singleblackmanfrom Des Moines. That's SBM from Des Moines, DESMOINES at duck.com. And I'll send you a complete list and prices of my works. If you order from me, it will be a little bit cheaper than Smashwords. However, I only use PayPal. If you need more payment options, then go through Smashwords. Let me tell you a story. Today's nonfiction. This one is called, and I borrowed this title from a joke from Rodney Dangerfield. We were so poor, Mom would cut holes in our pockets so we could have something to play with. Again, this is nonfiction. No pun intended, but the hardest thing I found about being in basic training and tech school in the service was finding a place to whack off in privacy. I was always socially awkward. I got zits in junior high, and it did nothing for my self-esteem. I couldn't sing that well. I couldn't dance. I was reasonably athletic, but eschewed contact sports, and on top of that, some of the brothers took their game a little too seriously for me. All I had was the Montgomery Ward's pantyhose ads and the occasional National Geographic. I was a child of the 60s. There was no internet, no free porn. I was an incel before the word was ever conceived. I can't say it was all my fault. I was a kid. Even when the girl was not shy about wanting to give me some, I had this puritanical streak in me that said, no, I better not. Albeit I may not have been that entirely attracted to them, but most of all, something that I became well acquainted with as I got older, I always had a hard time breaking up. Well, I didn't have a hard time, let's put it that way. The chicks had a hard time with me wanting to break up with them. No pun intended. I was a horny kid. The weirdest things would arouse me. There was a religious show called Lamp Unto My Feet that I watched on Sunday mornings, mainly because nothing else was on and I was waiting for the first station to show cartoons. There was one episode with a ballet sequence. All I can remember was I found it very sensual. Their bodies became entwined, and the female performer at the end seemed to wrap a leg around her male performer. I stared at the screen, my eyes agog, enwrapped with what I was seeing. I felt heat surging through my body, lasers of prepubescent lust oozing from my pores. That became somewhat of a benchmark for me. In one swell swoop, or I like to say colloquially, call this one swell poop, I acquired a liking for feet, not quite a foot fetish, but if I had to call it such, there it is. And I'd liken that to any paired balletic sequences as I saw on Lamp Unto My Feet. The foot thing came on later while being babysat by an older cousin. She went by the name of Sissy. She went by Sissy, but her name was Joanna. She was a fast thing. She ended up having a baby before graduating high school. She was pretty, and she was meticulous in her appearance. She'd often give herself pedicures while she attended to me. I didn't get any lustful thoughts about her until much later, obviously past the stage of needing a babysitter, but there she was doing a pedicure in front of me, so there was nothing else to look at. But I do remember looking at a Dick and Jane a Dick and Jane book years earlier, and remember seeing a picture of Jane in a bathing suit. And I got that heat again just by looking at the legs that the artist had rendered. I told you I was socially awkward. Perhaps it was hormones that made me preoccupied with sex. It was rare that I had an access to Playboy. People may laugh now, but Playboy was once considered scandalous. By the 1980s, Playboy was considered tame, coffee table fodder. I didn't know how to whack off until high school. More on that later. Up until then, I'd get these throbbing hard-ons that was agonizing to brush up against something with it. Before I knew how to masturbate, Mom busted me by finding some pictures of women I had in a dresser drawer. One was this beautiful gal who posed as a frontman for a trashy book called Naked Came the Stranger. I think Maud Adams was another, and there was some of Lainey Kazan. Mom asked if I liked girls. My Trumpian side kicked in, and I said, no, I was just learning how to draw them. Now, I was an amateur artist, and I drew quite a bit then, so it wasn't entirely a lie, but it was a lie nonetheless. Aside of my social awkwardness, most of my black peers, or a good number of them, thought I was an Uncle Tom. By all definitions, I was not. However, being disparaged didn't make me any more courageous. I didn't have a ton of white friends. None knew where I lived, but if you went by appearances, it looked like I preferred the company of white people over black. And it pains me to say, we were poor. There were spells where we didn't have any electricity at home. Even if I did have a prospect, there was no way in the world that I was going to bring her home. But that's another topic. It was just another factor in me not getting any trim. On top of the fact then and now, it's not cheap for a man to date. Anyway, though still not blessed with a lot of self-esteem and confidence, I hit a stride within a year of graduation of high school. I became a state officer in a youth group called DECA, so I did a lot of public speaking. And my sense of humor had gotten better. I was tall as I ever was going to be at 6 feet. I was around 180 pounds. I hated the term then, but I was considered cute. Once during a bookkeeping class, I noticed Toni Mitchell, a cute sister, mocking some of the white girls that were sitting around me and were repeatedly asking me questions. Adolescent jealous claws kicked in. But I digress. I was still socially awkward. I had no rap. All the girls I approached during these years soon knew they could do better. Getting repeatedly shot down and then later seeing who these gals were hooking up with soon led me to a place where I was thinking, do I want a girlfriend or do I just want a fuck buddy? It took many years of what is now called simping and having been burned by several women that I came to realize that if I wanted a girlfriend, that I'd have to like her, and that she'd have to like me. As I went from one girlfriend to another, it wasn't long before I took Nathan the Conqueror in hand. Pun intended. Even after I married, I was still beat off. With one exception, the girls I was with were perfectly willing to do the beast with two backs with me. There's a story about Harry Truman visiting a chicken farm. His wife, Bess, was giving a tour first and was told the rooster would have his way several times during the day. She was quoted to remark, "Tell that to Mr. President." When that remark was relayed to him, he asked, "The same hen?" Of course, the answer was no, several hens. To which Mr. Truman was quoted as saying, "Tell that to Mrs. Truman." At the time of this writing, I'm about to turn 69. Self-love has been among my best and most reliable friends. I'm glad our society has gotten past the puritanical attitude we once had toward masturbation. Getting caught had led me to several bouts of embarrassment. and subject to some teasing and ridicule. But as the song goes, love the one you're with. And again, this is entitled, We Were So Poor, Mom Had to Cut Holes in My Pocket So I'd Have Something to Play With. All right, I'm going to move on to Stop Me If You've Heard This. A gal was reading a newspaper and she noticed having a milk bath would help her complexion. So she left a note for her milkman to up her delivery of milk. The milkman knocked on the door and inquired about the order, saying it was more than she usually ordered. And she says, yes, I want to try a milk bath this time. So the milkman asked, pasteurized? And she says, no, just up to my boobs will be fine. Okay, that's going to do it today. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. Again, if you'd like to purchase my works, you can email me at singleblackmanfromdesmoines@duck.com. That's SBM from Des Moines, DESMOINES @duck.com. Or you can also go to Smashwords. All right, I'm going to close with this. Let's get Al out of the ghetto. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.